Welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. Here we'll talk to the leaders in technology, culture, business, and the arts. We'll cover politics, advocacy, motherhood, writing, mental health, and mostly we'll focus on hope. Join Kim B. Davis, author, playwright, radio personality, event consultant, professional speaker on the Kim B. Davis Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite resident guests on our show. So I've got to read all her titles because you know she has so many and I'll forget something. This is Dr. Angela Celeste May. She is our clinical organizational forensic psychologist. She is also the president of the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation Board. She is also an author and musician. Good evening,
Yes.
Dr. Angie. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to sit with you. Always. One thing I have to get corrected though, so that people don't come after me. It's not your fault. I I did clinical work for a long time. For your viewers who may not know, that means doing therapy. And things that you typically think of when you think of a psychologist.
Mhm.
But because I'm not maintaining my license at the moment, I'm planning to get it again. So because I'm not licensed, I am clinically trained, but I am not, my title is not a clinical psychologist.
Correct.
Forensic, yeah. Organizational, yes. And clinically trained, we should say. But yes, thank you.
See, that's why I have to read it because there's so much there I always forget. And not in my
That's okay.
That is correct. All right.
That's all right.
So our topic this evening is how to let go. And we've been talking over the last few months while we have been in this pandemic, which seems to be rearing up again. We have COVID numbers that are increasing. Certain countries have begun to lock down again. That may be an issue for us in America. We may have to do that. Not sure yet. We haven't heard any conversation around that. However, when we talk about letting go, for the last 4 years before President Biden came into office, we heard lots of talk of people saying, remember when America was great? Remember when the country was good for everyone? And, sometimes when trauma or people remember things, they remember it differently. And oftentimes people of different ethnicities, faiths, all those types of things will see things differently. And so when we look at when people remember things like that, we see them now rioting, saying, we're trying to take our country back. And I often ask the question, where are you taking your country back to? Okay.
Yes.
That's part one.
Or right. Or from.
Exactly.
Who are you taking it from and where are you taking it back to? Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Part two of letting go. I don't know about you, Dr. Angie, but I know I have, and I've done this myself. You go through something traumatic. It doesn't have to be anything grand. It could just be something that hurt you deeply and
Absolutely.
you're sort of stuck and you have to vent for a while. And I'm sure we've all known people who seem to vent beyond what many people would consider to be normal, meaning they are stuck in that place, whatever it was. It could be sexual trauma, it could be abuse, it could be some sort of violence, but it could also just be pain and hurt from a friend, from a family member. It could be infidelity from a spouse or something like that. But you have people who every time you see them, it's a reoccurring loop. Girl, let me tell you, and they keep going over the same thing over and
Yes.
over and over again because they can't let it go. What about also you see the same thing in families where, and I'm being sarcastic, this isn't a real situation, but in 1972 some cousins were sitting at a barbecue and their parents were arguing, who all happened to be aunts and uncles. And whatever happened in 1972 at that barbecue, at 2021, now these cousins who were children then, who are now grown, are arguing over something they have no idea because they can't let it go. because there was an issue in the family that was never resolved. You
Mhm.
know, this pandemic, this quarantine, this sheltering in place at home has held up a mirror for many of us to
That's
see
true.
our lives, ourselves, how we look to other people, things that we were really certain about in terms of careers and stability and relationships amongst our children, our spouses, our friends, different things. We saw some things and we were like, huh, that's not quite what I thought it was. Or
Mhm.
they realized that there were some things about themselves they weren't happy with. And tonight, just I know I've given you a lot, but I wanted to give a myriad of examples of different ways that people struggle in letting go. Because it's not just in one thing. Because, you know, a lot of times we'll say, oh, they were in an abusive relationship. She needs to let go. Like it's really easy to tell that person to let go, but it's not because their
Mhm.
emotions and all different other types of issues. But there are so many different examples of ways that people don't let go. So, will you talk a little bit about how people should let go and why
Mhm.
it's important?
Oh, definitely. And I love that you added the why it's important too, as well, because it is important. Definitely, it is. So, um, why? Well, we'll talk about why people have a hard time letting go.
Mhm.
And why it's important. Like you said, why it's important, and some of the damage that it can do to ourselves and those around us. Um, well, first of all, I think a lot of times when people say to others, you need to let go, or say about someone else that that person needs to let go, I think a lot of times people have an idea in their mind of what that means, or have an idea of what they think they're saying, and don't realize that what looks like putting one thing down is really it's like more nuanced than that, has several different aspects to it. So it's often not just one thing.
Mhm.
So let's go back to the 1972 barbecue. That example. That's a great example because, a lot of times individuals or siblings or whomever may have their own issues, you
Mhm.
know, oneself and one's friend, oneself and one's sibling, whatever. But these things that are not being let go, one of the ways they can hurt families or hurt ourselves and our loved ones is we pass them down.
Yeah.
So like you said, generations later, the kids are grown, they're still arguing and don't even realize they're arguing. So one of the reasons that it's hard to let go is that people often don't understand what it is they're letting go
Mhm.
of. What are they letting go of in the first place? So on the surface, it might look like some argument, some family argument from, like you said, from years ago between Uncle so and so and aunt or whomever. Or it may be something that's acknowledged as traumatic, like you said, like some kind of abuse. But in order to do the quote let go that people are thinking they're asking of the person, that requires a lot of different steps for many people. It requires recognizing, first of all, what the pain is. What's the wound?
Mhm.
You can't heal the wound unless you know where the wound is,
Mhm.
what the wound is. So not recognizing, or needing to recognize, first of all, what it is that you're letting go, what it is that you need to heal from. And a lot of times what happens is the reason it's handed down, and the reason that people rehash it, over and over again, is because yes, that wound is still open, because they're never really fully getting to what the problem is in the first place. For some people, that's because um, you know how the original, like the initial wound, has its own pain,
Mhm.
and then looking at it, opening it up, addressing it, revisiting that trauma is like, it can be re-traumatizing it.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of reasons that people don't always, or may, in some cases, may take them a lifetime to actually get to it,
Mhm.
because of fear, because that hurts, because I don't want to admit vulnerability, I don't want to admit something embarrassing, or whatever the case, can be all those different things. So first thing is recognizing what the actual issue is. And an example of that might be with the barbecue again. On the surface and to the kids or to the other family members, it may sound like that, I don't know, kids, family members will bet, I bet you such and such will have, and maybe it was a ball game, maybe it was a basketball game from December 1971 or something, and it's like, one won it, the other lost the bet. And so the folklore for years to come is that Uncle so-and-so cheated and I did not lose that bet. So that's the argument for the next 20 years.
Exactly.
25 years. Why can't I let it go? Well, it might seem like that's it on the surface. Like, you just can't let go of losing. You're just a sore loser. When people ask the question, why, they're making there are some assumptions being made, which you alluded to also. A, that is just one thing, as I mentioned, but B, that it's a simple thing, or that time is up, time's up. Well, in order to let that, that game, for example, you lost that bet, it could, a lot of times what people don't know is the symbolism around the issue. It may not be that they lost the bet so much as that bet was one more, was one more nail in the coffin, one more time in which that particular cousin or sibling, they're always one-upping me. They always are better than me. And they've been, maybe they've been compared to me in the family, or for ever since I can remember when we were kids.
Yeah.
And so it's not letting go of the bet so much as letting go of that whole history and that whole painfulness that bet represents, because it can be symbolic. And letting go, quote unquote, means having to forgive. Well, what's the big deal about forgiving a bet? Maybe it's not forgiving the bet. Maybe it's, again, the history behind it, the years behind it. You are always representing me like I wasn't as good. And that's self-esteem, an identity wound, and then you get into those other layers. So oftentimes that's what's going on, is that the thing that can't be let go of is just the surface, tip of the iceberg, and symbolic of other deeper things that need to be addressed in order to let that one bet go. And so that happens a lot of times. Tied to that, kind of hand in hand with that, another thing is not just recognizing what it's about, what it represents, what's underneath it, but also people have a hard time letting go of things if they're waiting. What are you waiting for? I'm waiting for you to admit that that you always got better treatment than I, that you always, or whatever the thing is. That can hold people up also. It doesn't have to. Certainly doesn't have to. We're going to talk about how to move past that. Like you said, the damage it can do, why it's important. But waiting, not recognizing what you're really dealing with, waiting for other people to acknowledge something before you can move on, not wanting to move on because I need, why is it so important that they acknowledge it if you know it? That's true, that ultimately is true. But the answer to why am I stuck there is validation. I'm waiting for that validation, that wound is having a hard time healing. So, those things can all be part of that. Before we get to why it's important to let it go, if I may, I'd like to.
Please read to us, Dr. Angela.
I like to read. I shall read from my book, Freedom. Yeah. Because like I said, freedom, it's all about letting go of getting stuck and turning, ways of finding ways to be free from stuckness in any area of life. This is page 74 and 75. This is the section that I often refer to when I'm referring to this book, because this is the section where the themes came out of the research. Well, what are some common themes that, keep people stuck and then help people, what have people found in common, men and women from different age groups, backgrounds, that help them get free of being stuck. So this particular theme, it's theme number 2. And it actually, the end of theme number 1, then we're going to go to theme number 2. So the theme number 1, the first one deals with, kind of like how you got stuck in the first place, background stuff, childhood stuff. So I'm going to go back for a second. Sorry. Page 72, it deals with self-limitation.
Okay.
So one of the themes that came out of the research that I did in this, asking this question of, what gets us stuck, just like you're saying, and how do we get free? One of the first themes that came out had to do with, backgrounds, messages we got growing up, verbally, nonverbal, or the way we were treated, etc., the way we were regarded, all of that. So letter B under this first theme is self-limitation. So there are ways in which we learn from those around us, learn from our parents, guardians, even if they didn't realize they were teaching that to us, and we picked that up a lot of times from the way we saw our elders handle or sometimes not handle being stuck, so well. So we kind of learn that. So in terms of self-limitations, the first is based on others' expectations and perceptions of us. So that's the first. That again, we kind of in growing up, we take our cues from the way we're treated, but also what's around us. And then number 2, others' perceptions of us are often fragmented. So I'm going to read a little bit from that. And by fragmented, I mean, like, for example, that kid who was always considered the sensitive one, the one who cried so easily, So that's the child that, gets labeled, oh, that's the sensitive one. Oftentimes our sensitivity is actually a strength, but you get labeled with being the sensitive one, meaning overly sensitive. So that it's a kind of a fragmented view of the person because it's not taking into account other reasons why, additional reasons why the child may respond as that child does, and the strengths of it. So then the child then takes on that idea of herself or himself. And that's why it's fragmented, like takes just one little part. So I'm going to read this. Of course, the perceptions that others have of us can be accurate, but too often they are skewed. You just get like just a part of that. After all, who knows better than oneself all the parts that make us unique? Most people do not get the opportunity to know all the sides of a personality that make up the whole person. So often others' expectations are based on just that fragmented view of the individual. So we're dealing just with the way people respond to us based on that one fragmented view. We can get stuck there. And, and that becomes our label, and we self-label as a result of that, going on. An example that I talk about, I changed the names, to protect the identities. But one of the people in my study is a young man named that I call Tony. Tony tried to describe how his mother's fragmented perception of him and narrow definition of success made it difficult for her to see him as a successful son because he was not working in a quote unquote traditional 9-to-5 kind of job. So no matter how successful he may have become as in the world's view, things that he, rightly should have felt proud about, he always felt like he wasn't quite, he just wasn't quite living up. He wasn't successful because of that fragmented view that he took on. And that's what we do a lot of times. We can't let go because we're still holding on to someone else's definition of who we are. So that's another reason of kind of getting stuck. Again, going back to that idea of first recognizing what is the thing we need to let go. Sometimes it's that fragmented view. Sometimes it's someone else's definition, and taking our power back to say, you know what, the way you see me, it may be one part of me, but there's so much more. Or the way you see me may not even be true at all. But to kind of step away from that. So that's important to keep in mind. And then one other thing I want to mention also from the same section of the book is a section, the next section actually, I called it reasons for remaining limited. So some of the reasons for remaining limited, and there were a few just a small, like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
First one is comfort. And that came out in the research too, that people were talking about not realizing that there's kind of a comfort. What do they say? It's better to deal with the devil you know than the devil.
Yes.
You know, so people stay uncomfortable. We hear about this oftentimes. You mentioned like in abusive relationships, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in an abusive relationship, you know, that's a horrible place to be in. To say it's uncomfortable is like an understatement,
Mm-hmm.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
But there could be greater fear about what lies beyond this space if I do, you know, step away. We also hear people talk about this in who have addictive challenges. They're, you know, the alcohol or drugs, whatever the case. You know, I'm miserable. I hate living like this, but it's kind of comfortable because it's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
At least I know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
At least I know, you know, where the pain is coming and how it's coming and what I feel, even though I hate it. So that comfort level with that limitation helps keep us stuck.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. The familiarity, comfort in a quotes. And then another thing that came out in the research is fear.
Mm-hmm.
Fear as a source of limitation. And then this quote right under that: sometimes we continue to place negative limitations on ourselves because we become frightened at the thought of life without them. So the pain, and you know, it's like, you know, this my familiar buddy pain, kind of, you know, comfort level with that, fear of moving past it. And then one other thing, and that's motivation from self and others. So that was the third one. And it sounds like a strange way to say it, like motivated, because you think of motivation as a good thing, which often it is. But in this case, the information that was coming from the people I interviewed, it was really kind of like motivation to stay where you are. Because other people are saying it's two things. On the one hand, people may encourage you to stay where you are. You're not ready to move on, or whatever the messages may be. But then the other thing, and this happens in families a lot of times, unfortunately, and other relationships, especially close relationships. And that is, well, if you move to the left or to the right, then that means I have to move to the left or to the right. No, I'm comfortable with you being, you're the studious one and you're the skinny one, and and the fragmented view of each one. So you have to stay stuck there because other people are threatened once you start to want to move out of that and grow beyond it, you know. So there's that's just 3, but of course there, you know, those kinds of things can keep us stuck. And you know, to the second half of your question, why is it important to move on? Staying stuck can kill us prematurely. That's one reason that can do it. For all those examples, whether we are abusing ourselves or allowing ourselves to, and I don't want to victimize the victim, but when I say allowing, at least not entertaining the idea that maybe there's life beyond this. Maybe I might be able to find a way out of this. So it's important because we can end our lives prematurely, and we can, that idea of generationally passing along, that this is how you deserve to be treated, because this is how I'm allowing myself to be treated. Those are 2 reasons right there. There's physical damage in terms of life and limb, of course, but also in terms of just the stressors in living in a way that has you stuck and on this endless cycle of the internal pressure of beating yourself up or can't let this go, that complaining, that old argument, that's negative energy. So to not let go of it over time, that means you're just constantly feeding your soul and your heart and your mind, this negative cycle that you can't let go of, and it's deteriorating. So if you don't shorten, if you're not, it can shorten your life also, but the quality of your life, if it doesn't shorten your life, it certainly, the quality of your life is not all that it can be. It can damage us mentally. It can be distracting. After a while, it can become hard to concentrate, constantly angry, can't let go. And we can lose ourselves psychologically, in terms of our own self-esteem, and standing up and finding those ways to say, you know what, I'll define. I may make some mistakes, but let me define and find out where my strengths and weaknesses are, and not just continue to, rehash and rehash and rehash. And then another thing too, I mentioned earlier, this idea of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Not forgiving keeps us stuck also a lot of times, even if we don't realize that that's what's going on. Why can't you let that go? Well, the real answer, even if you're not aware of it, underneath it a lot of times is because I can't forgive, and we know how a lack of forgiveness contributes to bitterness and how that can eat away, again, at our physical well-being, mental health, our emotional well-being. It eats away at our relationships, all of those kinds of things. So it is necessary. It is necessary to work on trying to let go of toxic things, toxic interactions, toxic self-talk, so that we can live a more quality life while we're here.
All of that was absolutely on point. You gave some great examples. And when we talk about how it can affect us psychologically, that's where depression and anxiety and some of those other issues come in. Then
Absolutely.
that when they present themselves, that your life is interrupted health wise, because now you have to deal with this. And I
Yes.
would even argue, because I just wrote this in my blog, that one of the goals for our highest and healthiest selves is having peace, having joy.
Yes.
Life is hard, but we still have to go on. Life
Mhm.
should be enjoyed, not just endured. And there are a lot of people walking around in the world who are just enduring life and not
So
embracing
true.
it to its full potential.
Absolutely.
But
That's so true.
I want to go back to something you said about forgiveness. And a lot of people will say, but I can't forget. So, can you talk a little bit about how forgiveness and forgetting works together? And if you aren't able to forget, if you still are capable of forgiving?
That's a great question. And that's so necessary. It's so necessary to talk about that. You're absolutely right. Because I do, I hear people say it all the time, I can forgive, but I'll never forget, or I can't forget. Uh, all things are possible, definitely are possible. Um, I would say that, and this is actually something I haven't announced formally yet, but I'm working, this is another project that I'm working on.
Okay.
And this speaks right to it, actually. Definitely working with women, but working, and I had this thought before, of course, this past year and George Floyd and all the other, but for Black men specifically,
Mm-hmm.
we as a people, we carry just generations of worth of wounds, this just past the trauma. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
Black women uniquely carry a certain amount of trauma, as we talk about, and then but so so do Black men.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of forgiving, a lot of people I know resist forgiving because it sounds like giving somebody a pass,
Mm-hmm.
letting them know it's okay that you treated me that way, or whatever the case is. It is possible to forgive and forget, on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's possible to remember and forgive. So the forgive and forget, I think that the saying is important because that experience of how it's like one of the indicators of resolution, like you finally are getting some resolution on something, or are growing past it, or are able to learn the lessons from that pain or whatever, move past it, when that day comes where it's not the first thing you think about,
Mm-hmm.
or you literally do forget about it, you moved on, and then when you remember, it's more distant. It's like, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time when you never thought that you would get there because it weighed so heavily.
Mm-hmm.
So that does happen. The things that, not to minimize anyone's trauma, but the things that perhaps weren't traumatic per se, but difficult challenging, that at 22 you just weren't gonna go. You just weren't gonna get it. You weren't gonna get over that. My language has left me. You just weren't gonna get over that, right? But then at 42, it's like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that, and doesn't minimize what the pain at the time, but it's a reminder we can and do grow past it if we allow ourselves to, if we can learn some lessons from that. So that happens. The forgive but never forget. I know a lot of people say that because again, they don't want to give they don't want anyone to think, and they don't want them to tell themselves that I'm, if I forget, then that means I'm saying it's okay what you did, and it is not. And or I'm not going to forget because I'm watching you.
I don't trust
you.
I don't trust you because back in 1972 you took my lunch money, Angie. I'm just saying.
I know.
I'm just saying. And so every time we sit at a table together and I lose some money, I'm like, that Angie, she stole my lunch money back in 1972. I know it was her.
Exactly.
And then I go around and tell everybody, yeah, she stole my money in 72, and I dropped my wallet. And I lost $5. I know it was her. I know it was her.
I know.
Look at her. She over there smiling. She got that coffee. She knows she ain't have $5 to get that sandwich, but she got it.
You know that.
I mean, this is extreme, but I've seen this before.
Absolutely.
And we laugh about it and go, that's some dysfunction. I don't want any parts of it. However, because of pandemic now, you have a lot of people who have come face to face with that.
Yes, that's true. You're absolutely right. And you make a very good point. The pandemic, we talk about how the pandemic has really forced us to, to deal with some things and like, sit down a little bit and deal with people we're living with and all that. All true, but you really are highlighting another aspect of that, of us being kind of forced to from the brakes and have to deal with. You're absolutely right. I think the healthy version of that, the healthy version is not forgetting, so that forgive, so that so that you will not let that weigh on you, so that you will not be a bitter person, holding on to the anger and the grudges and stuff can eat away at us, our souls, and our hearts. I'm a Christian, you and I are Christians, so we're told that as God forgives us, we should forgive others. So definitely there's value in that. The Bible also says that the Lord will erase that from the book of life if you sincerely apologize and sincerely. Now, and I agree, I resonate with that. I resonate with that because if the Lord gives us mercy in that way. I think the healthy, for the remembering, forgive but remember, I think the healthy version of that is remember for the lessons, remember for the things that help make me stronger. If I can use that to help others, if I can tell somebody else about the journey that I came through, about, yes, I did have that pain, which is different than living in it, being stuck in it, not being able to let it go, which, that kind of toxic emotion, that is not forgiving. But again, I think it can be healthy to remember for growth, for a reminder what we come through. And again, like I said, how you can use your experiences and those stories to help other people grow. But you notice that people who have come to some resolution are able to get past the pain. It can take a long time, it can take a lifetime for some people. But if you work through it, if you do come to a place of forgiveness, you notice how when they remember and share that, you don't get that biting stuckness, that that anger, that toxic emotion. You get instead the sharing part of it. The sharing part of it and the lessons to help other people. So both of those can be done, and I think are healthy parts of our journeys. And it's life is to be enjoyed. And it's also, we go through things to learn the lessons. They do make us stronger. What is it? Iron is
Iron
made
sharpens
stronger by
iron.
going through the fire.
Mhm.
So makes us stronger. So
Mhm.
all of that's important, but use it to grow and not to stay beat down and stuck.
Absolutely, absolutely. And iron sharpeneth iron.
Yes, absolutely.
So, if I am a person who's listening and I realize I have some unresolved issues and I'm
Mhm.
tired of being stuck and I really want to let go, but it's painful, Dr. Angela Celeste May. I just, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, whatever it is, whether it's the lunch money from 72 or, something more severe, what are
Mhm.
some things that I can do to help work myself through that process of identifying what the actual issue might be?
That's a great question. Um, I think one of the things that I do, like, for myself, that I encourage other people to do is um, keep asking questions.
Mhm.
It's kind of a way of becoming your own, like, become your own therapist, kind of, because one of the power of therapy and talk therapy particularly is the exercise of asking questions to spark contemplation, to look inward and to really take some time to dig deeper. And then as you do so, like peeling away an onion, you get deeper and deeper to reveal more, and you learn more about your own process and what's really under there. So I think that idea of becoming your own best, counselor or therapist starts with that healing process starts with asking yourself some questions. And you may not get answers right away,
Mhm.
but asking, well, what am I really mad about?
Mhm.
Yes, I'm mad about that. Yes, that's true. But why can't I let it go? What am I mad about? And just let that kind of marinate. And it's amazing how much we carry a lot of those answers with us inside. We just don't stop long enough to dig and to relax and rest and shine the light and start letting stuff come up. So I think asking ourselves questions, real honest questions, um, being honest with ourselves about some of the answers, and also our egos. Our egos have a big part to do with this.
Mhm. That's right.
By ego I mean pride.
Mhm.
That false, no, not the healthy. I'm
Mhm.
proud of myself. Not that kind of pride, but you know, who wants to feel like a punk and acknowledge? I felt like a punk that day.
I'm
I'm
not
so
gonna feel
stupid
like
because
that.
she took my money.
Right.
Who wants to say that?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
um, I think definitely getting ready to kind of check our ego a little bit, and in a safe space, in the mirror with yourself or with your best friend, or as you meditate or journaling, write about it, or whatever you need to do. Ask questions and be ready to acknowledge some of the truths. Well, that hurt my feelings. I didn't like the way that felt. I didn't like the way it made me look. I felt weak.
Mhm.
I felt vulnerable, and it wasn't in a good way. I felt taken advantage of. Start to answer some of those questions that one asks oneself.
Mhm.
Though starting to do that is really, really important, because the stuckness, when you're in the stuckness and rehashing that old argument, you're dealing with them.
Mhm.
When you start this internal asking questions process, it takes you further and further away from their obnoxiousness. Were they obnoxious? Well, yes, but you're not stuck because they're obnoxious. You're stuck because of how it impacted you, how you felt about it, your hurt feelings, your jealousy, your whatever it is. Put your in front of it, or put my in front of it.
Mhm.
That process is so important, because it really brings you back away from looking outwardly and back to centering internally, and really looking at where am I with this? Who
Mhm.
am I in this whole thing? What have I work, that I, me work, not in
Mhm.
a selfish way, but it's really an important process start walking that walk of backing away from the thing I thought I couldn't let go of. And before you know it, you're off, you're having another kind of conversation. Now, after a while, now you're dealing with, well, you know what? I mean, that's happened before, but I was able to brush it off. How come I couldn't brush this off? Well, it's because of that time when now you're off to a whole other conversation about what's really under that. And that's the prize. Before you know it, it gets a little lighter and a little lighter, and you don't have to sort of live there. You can like let that go a little bit more. So I think those are really important steps to take.
And I think those are very important. To add to that, you talk about what the Bible says about forgiveness, how God will forgive us if we forgive others. But forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is not for the other person. And, I know people who have been angry at relatives who've died, and it's 20 years later and they're still ruminating on whatever it was they were arguing about. And I'm looking at them like, that person is gone. I'm sorry for you. I don't have anything to do with it. I know you're angry and upset, but I don't want to hear it anymore because you had an opportunity to deal with it and you didn't. You got to figure another way and channel that energy into something positive, because all you're doing is driving yourself crazy. This person
Absolutely.
is gone.
Yeah. And actually, then that's difficult too. It's like a trick bag kind of, because because they're gone.
Right.
They're gone. You can't get those answers like you would want them. You can't get that direct forgiveness in a way that you would want, or that conversation. One of the things that can help with that is have the conversation anyway. Have the conversation. Have the conversation anyway. Going back to kind of like different things people do in therapy and things that can help with people who get stuck, particularly with someone who's passed on. And you may have heard of this when they say, write a letter to them and then tear it up. Write a letter, burn it. That symbolism, kind of like get it out.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of like talk to them anyway, because we know the communication has the two sides. And the frustrating part, of course, is that the other side is not there to answer. And so we feel like, well, I have to carry this around because they're not here to answer. You don't have to carry around. Tell them anyway.
Right.
Get that out. Talk about, how that felt. And people often find that to be very relieving, more relieving than they would have thought, actually. And I think that speaks volumes, because it really highlights how much that is about my feelings, that even if they're not on the other end, we can't deny that, there can be a certain kind of satisfaction and resolution with both sides of the conversation being there, the other part of the communication. But so much of it really is about what I need to express and get off my chest, and what I need to say about this. And this whole idea of being victimized in any way, whether it's taking the lunch money or a more traumatic victimization that a person feels that they have gone through, so much of that is about, as we've heard people say, stealing your voice. And having that conversation with them anyway. We'll call it a conversation, even though the other end is not there, but saying what you need to say to them anyway is a way of regaining your voice. And that in and of itself can really do a lot toward getting unstuck and getting that up off. You don't have to wait for them to be there to get that up off of your shoulders. So that can help a lot. And there are different ways of doing it. There's just saying it, out loud. There's writing about it. Some people, it helps for them to have another human being there, not to respond, but just, so that's where people like therapeutic techniques, where they'll do the empty chair, or they'll have a person there just to be able to say it, and get it out. And I think the other thing too is the validation is a big part of that. Um, Hopefully we can learn, and hopefully we are taught or can learn through, nurturing from others, be it, counseling, therapy, whatever the case, um, pastoral, support, or whatever the case. But hopefully we can learn how to validate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a believer, that that's a great source of comfort for people who are, have been stuck, and doubly so when they're stuck and the person has passed on and they're not there to, having that ongoing conversation with the Lord and letting God, hearing that response back from God, what the Lord tells us about it, can help relieve that. But that whole validation part, that's a big part of why people get stuck with wanting and waiting for the other person to tell us, I'm waiting for you to acknowledge I need you. It is that validating of, I want you to admit that what you did hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That feels very important. It is very important. But if they never admit it, they don't own the truth.
Right.
So the truth is still that even if they didn't mean it, it hurt. So don't wait on them to say it. Go ahead and let the truth be the truth and say, you know what, that hurt. And talk about, and you have the freedom to talk about. They're not taking your voice from you. Don't let them take your voice. Say that it hurt. Say why it hurt. Go ahead and talk that thing out and talk it through. So those kinds of things can really help a person, and to validate, if it's your loved one, or if it's yourself, validate yourself. Get with someone that you really feel you can trust, and and who you feel will validate your feelings, that I understand that, or even if I can't understand or relate to it, I totally hear what you're saying. It's your response makes all the sense in the world. So all of that's really, really important, and all of that's a part of the healing process, I think, to get past the stuckness. Now, I too have had the experience of dealing with someone who just really, it did a lot of work, and got better in terms of resolution, but still, you still couldn't quite, still had that argument. And sometimes what I have witnessed and what I have seen and what I know from my own life, my experiences with other people, is that you just never stop doing the work, because we keep growing. So you never stop. So I also would say to the friend of the person, or to the loved one of the person who's stuck, as you're being there for them and validating them and helping them, in whatever way you feel you can be there for them without draining yourself utterly. I think it's also important for our loved ones around us and our support network to recognize that, and something my mom said, she was absolutely right. Because we can get frustrated with ourselves too. Like, why? Gosh, I thought I was done with this, And she made a really, really good point. If you are working on it and you're praying about it, you're trying to let it go, you're talking it through, and all the rest of you're trying to forgive and everything. Sometimes 15 years later, you're not really dealing with the same thing that you were dealing with before.
Right.
Sometimes it is growth. You are dealing with something a little deeper now, and it is part of your process. So I think that's important for the support network to recognize too, to listen. Sometimes they really are stuck, and it's the same thing 15 years ago, but sometimes what they're wrestling with now that sounds like it's still about that may be another component. So I think there's growth for everyone involved in those processes too.
That was amazing, Dr. Angie.
Yeah.
You took us from
Things we learn in life. Yes.
absolutely. You took us from understanding what it means to be stuck, to the why we need to be unstuck, and to the reasons why it can be difficult for us to get unstuck. But then we also saw what it looks like on the other side, when we have joy and we have freedom in our spirits.
Yes.
So thank you for that. I know you want to talk a little bit about your book because our time is quickly going. So I want you to talk about your book. You got to tell us about music
Thank you.
and all the other things that you have going on, and tell us how we can find you.
Okay, well, thank you. As always, thank you for asking. I so appreciate the opportunity. The book, well, starting with the book, since I quoted from it already a little bit. Again, like I said, the full name, here's the fine print, the tiny writing. The full name is Freedom. What is the experience of living without negative self-imposed limitations? And it doesn't mean, I'm going to teach you how to live with this, this little slim book. I'm going to teach you how to live in 3 easy lessons with no stress. It's not that. It's not that. But it is, as I said, from the research that I did and the wonderful people that allowed me into their lives, to talk with them about their struggles and things that they've learned. It is a tool to help you get free. Some things that can be helpful to grow beyond feeling stuck. And as I've said before about the book, what I really love about it is it's so universal and so applicable, whether it's relationships, career stuff, self-esteem stuff, whatever. I really feel the themes that came out of it are helpful. And people have told me that as well, that they found it very, very helpful. People quote my book to me, which I think is just too cool. But I appreciate it. I really do. It is right now, you can get it from the publisher, which is Ex Libris, spelled with an X, XLIBRI. I'm more of a visual than I am auditory. XLIB as in boy, RIS, Ex Libris. So you can get it directly from the publisher. You can get it from Amazon. There's an ebook version of the book. I need to restock it with the hardcovers and soft covers. So we're in the process of doing that right now, but you can look at both places for that. On the psychology side of what I do, I am president of A.M. May and Associates Incorporated. I co-own the company with my sister, Michelle. She's the M in A.M. And we do counseling, consulting, and coaching. So my sister's a licensed counselor. So she's shortly going to be offering counseling under our company soon, in a few months. We'll make an announcement about that. But then we also do consulting for companies and businesses, et cetera. And then we do personal and professional coaching also. So you can find us at amassociates.com. Go to our website for that. We have a Facebook page as well, AMA Associates, and Instagram. Me personally, I am on Facebook and Instagram. And like I said, my name is I just put Angela. There's no stage name. I say, I'll make sure my kindergarten teacher can find me. Look, this is not Pookie. It's not Pookie. It's Angela Celeste May. That's it. I have a YouTube channel as well, and the YouTube channel is more primarily music stuff, and I have vocal quick tips and lots of stuff. You can find me on Twitter. That's the one place I don't have Angela Celeste May. It's my middle name, Celeste. So it's Celeste MUS, so short for music. Celeste MUS, the number 1. That's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram is all Angela Celeste May. So we've got some stuff coming up under our company that we will be announcing. So look for that on our Instagram, more coaching opportunities. I do personal coaching as well. So come to our website. If you're interested in, I do personal and professional coaching for people of all kinds of backgrounds, including fellow artists, no matter what kind of artist you are. And I also do dissertation coaching as well. I do doctoral coaching. I do for people working on their doctoral dissertation, kind of help them with that. So, check me out for that. Musically right now, I'm in the process of a couple of projects under my other company, Celeste Productions Incorporated. One is producing my husband's album, actually. So we're just starting to work on that. So I'm producing that, and I have possibly a little mini tour I'm putting together at the moment.
Wow.
I'm in the beginning stages of that. So that'll be coming up a little bit later, like later in the year. So Stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. I think that's everything at the moment. You mentioned I'm the new president of the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation. Speaking of that, we have a between now and April, latter part of April, you can go to Michigan Psychological Association, MPA. Go to Michigan Psychological Association, and on there you can see, click on, you will see MPAF. That's the foundation board of which I'm the president. And we're doing this is our second year doing a diversity scholarship. So last year, they invited me to join the board. I was very honored. Invited me to join the board in 2019. I did. I was able to steer a change in the direction of the scholarship grant that was being given at the time and now it's a diversity grant, so specifically to support doctoral students of color. So 2020, that's when we started that shift, and they asked if I would chair that. So I chaired that, and it was very successful. So I'm now the president of MPAF board, and we're continuing with that now. Again, this is year 2 of the doctoral dissertation diversity grant. So go to MPA, Michigan Psychological Association, click on Michigan Psychological Association Foundation and look for the scholarship, drop down scholarships and awards, and and apply. So that's some of what's going on right now.
Excellent. This is so exciting. I'm so excited for you. So we got to figure out this tour and schedule for the Kim B. Davis show, because that means we might miss out on our Dr. Angie and all your advice.
Get out of that.
We'll figure it out. We'll work it out. But
yes,
Angie, thank you for coming on and telling people how important it is to have a voice, how important it is to admit that you're hurting, how important it is to seek out help, because too many people are hurting. And
I also want to say too, I'll say you're absolutely right. And as much as it can feel like nobody knows what this feels like in all the world and all the millions of years the earth has been here, somebody somewhere knows what that feels like. So you're not in it alone. You're not at all, not in it alone. So there are, there's suicide prevention hotlines. If you have insurance, there's so many of my friends and colleagues who do therapy and counseling. There's telehealth now. So, reach out if you don't know any place else to start with. Go to Michigan Psychological Association. If you're not in Michigan, go to American Psychological Association, APA, if you want to find a therapist or someone. And if I know you have overseas people, you have folks from France and Germany and other areas, Russia watching. And just about, every country you can, reach out and find someone who's offering some counseling or some support so that you don't have to, just as you say, Kim, you don't have to feel that you are alone in your hurting, because you are not, and there's help for you.
That was a perfect way to end the show, Dr. Angie. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next month on our show.
I look forward to as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok at Kimberly Bachelor Davis. Bachelor is spelled BATCHELOR. You can also view the Kim B. Davis Show on YouTube. So if you hit youtube.com/Kimberly Bachelor Davis, you can see the show. You can also hear us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google. You can also find out more information about me at www.kimbdavis.com. As always, remember, be magnificent.